prepared to get the information from the captain by any means necessary, or kill him if he attempted to get a message back to whoever had bought the woman or to warn Nightingale that the operation was in jeopardy. They'd gotten GPS coordinates of where the pickup boat was supposed to be waiting to receive the money for the dancer. After Black headed off the other boat, their plan was to meet back at another prearranged set of coordinates. Gray nodded at Black and slipped into the waters. It was late and he could see the lights of San Francisco in the distance, but knew they were miles away. As he swam toward the coordinates, Gray briefly reflected on the days when he used to do this sort of thing for his country. He had always loved the water. His mother said that he loved baths from his very first one, when he was just 2 days old. He'd been on his high school swim team and had earned a swimming scholarship to the U.S. Naval Academy. It was almost inevitable that he'd become a Navy SEAL. But after they'd gotten fraudulent intel and his entire team had been killed, he'd become jaded. He'd taken out his anger over losing his team on anyone and everyone around him. Thank God Rex had offered him the job with Mountain Mercenaries. Gray had no idea how the man had found him, and frankly he didn't really care. He enjoyed what he did, and honestly felt like he was making a difference in the world. There would always be those who took advantage of others, but maybe, just maybe, he and the rest of the group were making a dent in the numbers. The slightly choppy ocean waves didn't bother him as he continued to stroke through the water. He took the time to go over the plan in his head once more. He thought about what he wanted to ask the courier and what information Rex needed about Gage Nightingale so they could shut down his massive operation once and for all. It was risky driving the boat to the rendezvous, because it probably wasn't registered, and the last thing Gray wanted was to be caught by the Coast Guard and questioned. Ball was a former coastie, but since he wasn't here, Gray couldn't rely on him to smooth things over if necessary. But he'd deal with any trouble later, if it came to that. Lifting his head as he swam, Gray saw the large form of the fishing vessel bobbing in the water ahead of him. He smiled. He'd made good time. He switched from a freestyle stroke to a breaststroke so his movements wouldn't be seen from the vessel if anyone was watching the dark waters. He knifed through the waves as easily and stealthily as an eel. When he arrived at the boat, Gray reached down and slipped off his flippers, and they quickly sank below the surface. The boat was bigger than he'd expected. It was black and white with quite a bit of rust marring its sides. It was also run down, not cared for in the way someone who actually fished for a living would be sure to look after it. Using his upper body strength, Gray pulled himself up far enough to see over the side to check things out. The wheelhouse was located toward the front of the vessel, and there was a door that led below decks. There were nets hanging here and there on the back of the boat, as well as at least a dozen fishing poles. Miscellaneous crates and tubs were also strewn about the deck. Seeing no one, Gray silently pulled himself up and over the back of the boat, landing without a sound on the crowded back deck. Ducking behind a crate, then a barrel, he made his way to the door to the lower deck of the vessel. He didn't want someone coming up behind him while he was interrogating the captain. There was only supposed to be one man on the boat, but Gray never assumed anything. Gray was wearing a black dry suit equipped with several strategic pockets for things like knives, identification for the authorities in case they got involved, and other essentials. The dry suit was imperative for swimming in the Pacific. The water was way too cold for a simple wetsuit. Wetsuits allowed for the easy flow of water in and out of the material, whereas a dry suit kept water out. Gray wasn't planning on being in the water for an extended period of time, but he'd be a poor excuse for a SEAL if he didn't prepare for everything that could go wrong. After extracting the small wedge of wood he carried for exactly this purpose, Gray shoved it under the tight bottom gap of the door. If someone tried to push it open from below the deck, they'd be unable to manage it without a lot of noise, thus alerting Gray to anyone else's presence on the vessel. Finally, he turned his